Hi, I'm Celine. At 32, I never imagined I'd be sitting in our living room, surrounded by my closest friends and family, explaining why my mother-in-law was now legally barred from approaching our home. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. I still can't believe Judith would go this far, my husband Marcus said, pacing nervously. His usually confident demeanor had crumbled since the discovery last week. My own mother. Honey, please sit down. You're making me anxious, I said, bouncing our 6-month-old daughter Emma on my knee. She gurgled happily, oblivious to the tension surrounding her. Sorry, Marcus sighed, sinking into the couch beside me. I just keep replaying everything in my head, looking for signs I might have missed. My best friend Danny leaned forward, her nurse's scrubs still wrinkled from her 12-hour shift. Stop beating yourself up, Marcus. Manipulative people like your mother are experts at hiding their true intentions. Exactly, agreed our neighbor Vanessa, tucking her graying hair behind her ear. I've known Judith for 5 years, and I never would have suspected, well, until I overheard that phone call. The room fell silent as everyone recalled the series of events that had brought us here. It had started 3 days ago when I was preparing for a trip to visit my parents. Emma was napping, and I was methodically organizing her diaper bag, something that had become second nature since her birth. Tell us again exactly what happened, prompted Carlos, Marcus's childhood friend and our family lawyer. I want to make sure we document every detail correctly. I took a deep breath. Judith had watched Emma the day before while Marcus and I had our monthly date night. When I was checking the diaper bag to restock it, my hand brushed against something sharp in the side pocket. And you're certain the needles weren't there before? Carlos asked, his pen poised over his legal pad. Absolutely positive, I replied firmly. I always check that bag thoroughly. It's a habit from my years working in childcare. I found 3 hypodermic needles wrapped in tissue paper, tucked into a pocket where I regularly reach for pacifiers. Marcus's face darkened. And if Celine had been pricked, or worse, if Emma had somehow gotten hold of them? That's exactly what your mother was counting on, Vanessa interjected. Her usually cheerful face was grave. I was watering my plants on the porch when I overheard Judith on her cell phone in her car. She was parked right in front of my house, windows down. What exactly did you hear her say? Carlos prompted. She was talking to someone about how she'd finally have the evidence needed to prove Celine is an unfit mother. She specifically mentioned calling Child Protective Services as soon as the needles were discovered. Vanessa shuddered. She said, and I quote, "Once CPS finds drug paraphernalia in the baby's things, they'll have to give custody to Marcus, and I'll finally have my granddaughter away from that woman." The room fell silent. Even Emma seemed to sense the gravity of the moment, her tiny face growing serious as she looked up at me. The most disturbing part, I said quietly, breaking the silence, is that she was willing to put her own granddaughter at risk just to get rid of me. Marcus took my hand, his grip almost painfully tight. This ends now, he said, his voice breaking. No one threatens my family like this. No one. The following morning, Danny arrived at our house before her shift, medical kit in hand. Her usual bubbly personality was subdued as she examined the needles I had carefully placed in a sealed container. These are standard hypodermic needles, she confirmed, her professional demeanor taking over. Commonly used for insulin or other injectable medications. They're unused, but that doesn't make this any less serious. Could you document this officially? I asked. As a medical professional? Already on it, Danny replied, taking photos and notes. I'll write up a formal statement for Carlos. This is absolutely outrageous, Celine. Have you confronted Judith yet? Marcus, who had been silently watching from the kitchen doorway, shook his head. We're doing this by the book. Carlos advised us to gather evidence first, then file a police report, and contact CPS ourselves to get ahead of any false claims. Smart, Danny nodded approvingly. The last thing you need is Judith controlling the narrative. The doorbell rang, and Marcus tensed visibly before going to answer it. He returned with Carlos and a woman I didn't recognize. Celine, this is Detective Rivera, Carlos introduced. She specializes in family cases, and has agreed to take our statement informally before we file the official report. Detective Rivera had kind eyes that contrasted with her stern expression. Mrs. Chen, I understand you're in a difficult situation. Carlos has briefed me, but I'd like to hear everything from you directly. For the next hour, I recounted every detail while Detective Rivera took meticulous notes. She asked pointed questions about Judith's behavior over the years, many of which revealed patterns I hadn't fully recognized. Has your mother-in-law expressed disapproval of your parenting before? She asked. I exchanged glances with Marcus. Constantly, I admitted. Nothing was ever good enough. The way I fed Emma, how I dressed her, my decision to use cloth diapers, everything was wrong in her eyes. She's been pushing for more unsupervised time with Emma, Marcus added, getting increasingly insistent about overnight stays at her house, even though Emma is still breastfeeding. And has she ever threatened to seek custody before, even jokingly? Detective Rivera pressed. Marcus's face fell. She's made comments about how Emma would be better off with her, or how she raised children properly unlike modern parents. I always thought it was just generational stuff, not this. Is there anyone else who might have witnessed concerning behavior? Detective Rivera asked. My brother Alex, Marcus replied immediately. He's been saying for years that Mom has gotten more controlling, especially since Dad died. He stopped bringing his kids around her because of some of the things she said. I'd like to speak with him, Detective Rivera said, making another note. Also, Mrs. Chen, I strongly recommend you contact CPS proactively. Explain the situation before any potentially false reports come in. Already scheduled for this afternoon, Carlos confirmed. I've also drafted a restraining order application based on the evidence we've gathered. What about security footage? Danny suddenly asked. Didn't you install those cameras after Emma was born? My eyes widened. In the shock of everything, I had completely forgotten about our home security system. The front door and living room cameras would have caught Judith when she was babysitting. Detective Rivera's expression shifted to one of measured hope. That could be extremely valuable evidence. Let's review that footage immediately. The security footage was damning. Clear as day, it showed Judith removing something from her purse and slipping it into the diaper bag, while Emma napped in her bassinet. The timestamp matched exactly with when she had watched Emma during our date night. 2 days later, we found ourselves in a conference room at the police station. Judith had been asked to come in for questioning, but she didn't know we would be there too. Carlos had arranged it this way to ensure the confrontation happened in a controlled, documented environment. When Judith walked in, escorted by Detective Rivera, she froze upon seeing us. Her perfectly coiffed silver hair and immaculate pantsuit couldn't mask the flash of panic in her eyes. What's this about? She demanded, her voice wavering slightly. Marcus, what's going on? Marcus sat rigidly beside me, his jaw clenched. Sit down, Mother. Mrs. Peterson, Detective Rivera said professionally. We've asked you here to discuss some concerning evidence regarding an incident at your son's home. Evidence? What evidence? Judith scoffed, but I could see her hands trembling as she clutched her designer purse. Is this about Celine's ridiculous accusations? I told you she's been trying to turn you against me, Marcus. We have footage of you placing objects in the baby's diaper bag, Detective Rivera stated flatly, sliding stills from our security camera across the table. Judith's face paled. I was just organizing her things. Celine keeps that bag in such disarray. Needles, Mom, Marcus interrupted, his voice deadly quiet. You put needles in our baby's diaper bag, and then you plan to call CPS to report Celine for having drug paraphernalia. That's absurd. I would never. We have a witness who overheard your phone conversation, I said, finally finding my voice. Explaining exactly how you plan to use this to get CPS to take Emma away from me and give custody to Marcus. You've always hated me, Judith hissed, her facade cracking. You turned my son against me from day one. You never let me be a proper grandmother. A proper grandmother doesn't endanger her grandchild to frame her daughter-in-law, Marcus exploded, slamming his hand on the table. You could have hurt Emma. Do you understand that? Those needles could have injured my daughter. I was careful. They were wrapped up. I just needed evidence. Evidence of what? I asked, forcing my voice to remain calm despite the rage building inside me. I've never used drugs. You fabricated a situation that could have harmed your granddaughter. You're not good enough for my son, Judith spat. You never have been. Your parenting is a joke. Breastfeeding until she's practically walking, those ridiculous organic foods, not letting her cry it out. She needs discipline, structure. What she needs, Marcus said coldly, is to be safe from you. Marcus, darling, Judith's tone suddenly changed, becoming pleading. I only wanted what was best for Emma. You know how much I love her. I just thought, if I could show you what kind of mother Celine really is. By framing her for drug use? Detective Rivera interjected skeptically. I made a mistake, Judith admitted, tears welling in her eyes. I was desperate. Celine keeps me from seeing Emma whenever she wants. I barely get any time with my only grandchild. Can't you understand? I'm sorry, I truly am. It was a terrible lapse in judgment. I watched her performance with a hollow feeling. This was the Judith I knew. Manipulative, quick to play the victim, always with a justification for her actions. I'm sorry too, Mom, Marcus said, standing up. Sorry that it's come to this. We've filed for a restraining order, and Detective Rivera will explain the criminal charges being considered. Criminal charges? Judith gasped. Marcus, you can't be serious. I'm your mother. And Emma is my daughter, he replied firmly. I will always choose her safety. Always. 6 weeks later, we sat in Dr. Landon's office for our family therapy session. The soft-spoken therapist had been helping us process the aftermath of Judith's actions and the subsequent legal proceedings. How are you feeling about the court's decision, Marcus? Dr. Landon asked gently. Marcus sighed, absently playing with Emma's tiny fingers as she sat in his lap. Relieved mostly. The 2-year restraining order gives us time to heal and establish better boundaries. And the mandatory counseling the judge ordered for my mother might actually help her understand the gravity of what she did. And you, Celine? I considered the question carefully. Validated. For years, I felt like I was overreacting to Judith's behavior, like I was the problem. Having a judge recognize how dangerous her actions were. It matters. Dr. Landon nodded. It's important that you both feel that justice has been served appropriately. Celine, you mentioned last week that Judith has been sending letters? Yes, I confirmed. All through her court-appointed therapist as required. They're apologetic, but still with undertones of justification. She claims she never meant to harm Emma and was acting out of grandmother's love. Which is exactly why we're maintaining the boundaries the court established, Marcus added firmly. Until she can take full responsibility without excuses, nothing changes. The door opened and Alex, Marcus's brother, joined us with his wife Teresa. They had been an unexpected source of support throughout the ordeal. Sorry we're late, Alex apologized, taking a seat. The traffic was terrible. We were just discussing the letters from Judith, Dr. Landon explained. Teresa nodded sympathetically. We got one too. Full of the same old manipulative tactics. Guilt, selective memory, minimizing her actions. She still doesn't understand that this isn't about punishing her, Alex said, shaking his head. It's about protecting the children and establishing consequences for dangerous behavior. Dr. Landon directed the conversation toward healing. Marcus, Celine, have you thought more about what rebuilding family connections might look like in the future? We've discussed it, I said, looking at Marcus for confirmation. If, and it's a big if, Judith completes her therapy program and demonstrates genuine change, we'd consider supervised visits after the restraining order expires. But Emma will never be alone with her again. That's a healthy boundary, Dr. Landon approved. And what about your support system? How has that evolved through this experience? Marcus smiled for the first time that session. It's stronger than ever. Vanessa checks in daily. Danny has practically moved in some weekends to help with Emma. Carlos and his wife have us over for dinner regularly. Even my colleagues have been incredibly understanding about my taking time off. We've learned who our real family is, I added softly. The people who show up, who respect boundaries, who prioritize Emma's well-being above their own desires. And how are you feeling about your decision to address this legally rather than privately? Dr. Landon asked. I exchanged glances with Marcus before answering. It was absolutely the right choice. Going through proper channels meant the truth came out in a documented, indisputable way. Judith couldn't manipulate or deny her way out of it. The hardest part, Marcus admitted, was accepting that my mother's love came with such dangerous conditions. But ultimately, this wasn't about punishing her. It was about protecting our daughter and establishing that actions have consequences. As our session concluded, Dr. Landon asked her usual closing question. What's one positive thing you're taking forward from this week? I finally hung up those family photos in Emma's nursery, I said with a small smile. The ones of just us, you, me, and Emma, our little family. It felt right. Marcus squeezed my hand. And I had that conversation with my boss about the promotion, the one I'd been putting off because of all this. He's giving me the position, which means more flexibility to work from home. As we left Dr. Landon's office that day, Emma asleep in her carrier, I realized something important. We hadn't sought revenge against Judith. We had simply established boundaries, pursued justice through proper channels, and prioritized healing. In doing so, we had created something stronger than what we had before. A family defined not by blood or obligation, but by respect, trust, and unconditional love. Sometimes protection is more powerful than retribution, and building something new is more healing than destroying what caused the pain.